Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today I woke up to the most expected surprise in the MCOC right now, and that is the fact that the Guardians buff has been nerfed already for long form content specifically though. Because Kabam seemingly have figured out that Guardians' total damage output looked to be too high, so they, well, yeah, I mean, like, to say that I kind of saw this coming is an understatement in a sense. But on the flip side, yeah, he might actually become better for what I would want to use Guardian typically. And we're going to talk about it. So what has been changed to Guardian and as to why, and what are the implications? Guardian's trauma stack limit was already reduced from 3 to 2. Which is fair enough, because he did do, enough extra damage and stuff like that. And now he can have 1 trauma debuff. Now the trauma has been made more potent, slightly, to 100 from 80%, so 20% more potent. But you will not be able to get the second stack of it on you. So if you could do 160% of your damage dealt to your opponent as a burst of physical damage, now you can get 100%. So any fight that effectively isn't 1 level 2 and done will be slower. And I find it incredibly funny. I genuinely do. Because this is another one of those things where, why do this in the first place? I'm not talking even about why changing it to 1 trauma, which I think is like fair enough. I get, if you're worried about something. Why show us the initial version of Guardian buff? Because the initial versions of pretty much, well, so far of these buffs, from what we have seen since they have showcased the early versions of these buffs, they do them better and then they tune them down. So they have already officially basically sandmanned the Guardian. They are reducing the damage output here. For any fight that isn't done basically with 1 level 2. For any fight where you would want to activate the second level 2, the Guardian's damage output will be smaller. Now, and again, this is very, very important thing, just like with Sandman's buff and any other buff. I haven't played the buff, I'm not in CCP. And he might still be great. In fact, I hope he will be great. In fact, I think, I will still like the character. But the question is here, why do this? Because at the day this embargo allegedly was lifted for CCP, they are allowed to showcase the early version of buff, which I obviously also cover, because at that point the information is out there. And, whether I do or don't make a video will not change the fact whether the community does or does not find out about it. And I can give my thoughts about it, which was, by the way, exactly this. My thoughts were, Guardian looks amazing, his buff is probably going to get tuned down. Or it's quite likely that his buff could get tuned out, or I'm most worried about his buff getting tuned out. And yeah, well, sure enough, like, not even a week later, Red Guardian's buff is getting it tuned down. Why? It's like, that is... We don't see the early versions of new champions Kabam is working on, with incomplete sets of abilities, or whilst they over or under tuned. Why are we being shown these early versions of buffs? It's like, I just don't quite get it. Because then obviously if they undertune the buff, people are already gonna have their first impression of the buff, that the buff will suck. And even if they improve that buff, it's going to be hard for that champion to recover from all the bad press and coverage initially. And then, obviously, the counterpoint happens. A lot of people get hyped. I know some people who immediately ranked up their Guardian, which is something that I advise people not to do because of things like this. That'll be very, very pissed right now for us. And, yeah, so... They show an amazing buff, generate a lot of hype, and then they tune it down and generate a lot of anger and outrage and frustration with them. Now, and again, to be very, very clear in this video, Guardian technically becomes slightly better in any fight that you can finish with like a level 2 and a level 1 or just a single level 2 or something like that. Because he will get slightly 20% more trauma damage off the get-go. Obviously, as soon as you drop the second level 2, you will be doing significantly less damage because trauma will not stack. You're only going to have one stack of trauma. And yeah, I'm just kind of generally confused. I mean, aside from the fact that this is funny, Kabam has showed us like 2 good buffs so far since they started, and both of them have been getting tuned down. Since they started doing these early buff showcases, like 2 buffs have gotten attention, and both of them are like, oh, never mind. And they can't even say you weren't meant to see this because, well, if CCP uploads videos from the CCP beta server, they have clearly, allowed them to show that to us. And everybody gets talking, and people are super hyped, and people in my chat room are talking about it, and people in, the live stream chats are talking about it. And, it's like, these are the mysteries of MCOC. It's just such an irresponsible thing to do. It genuinely blows my mind. Well, anyhow, the rest of the Guardian kit is not changed, so obviously he will still be better. And he, technically will even be better for the shortest of the fights. His max damage is going to be worse, so he's going to be worth for any medium to long form content. Basically anything that requires you to throw more than 1 level 2. And now he will kind of have crappy interaction with Despair as well, because other than that, you could stack up like 4 debuffs easily with Guardian, which is already 60% regen mitigation. Now it's going to be less because you only have 1 debuff on each special attack, which is 3 debuffs, which, isn't necessarily enough to fuel properly Inequity and Despair. So yeah, overall reducing the debuff count, is not something I'm a fan of as well. For longer fights, we'll see. I still hope to like the character, like, don't get me wrong. I really liked him on paper before he was released. When he was initially released, I still liked him because he was unique. He was a very, very first buff immune champion. And now we'll see, but I mean, this is genuinely kind of like the most expected news drop of FCC. Why? Why are you doing this? Come on. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the